going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly DFS core plays for the Sanderson Farms Championship. Going to cover my top 6 exposed plays priced $8,000 and above on Draftkings to give you an idea of who I'm building my lineups around. Last week at the President's Cup was definitely a different format, something that a lot of you out there probably weren't used to, but using game theory, making sure that we were creating optimal lineups like we talked about on our Wednesday live stream, we went out and had ourselves a week. Our core picks all played at least 4 slates, which you love to see. In fact, Jordan Spieth ended up winning in all 5 slates. JT won in 4. You had a few other winners that got to 4 as well. So not a surprise that we had a pretty damn good week as a result. You can see on the screen a lineup that I went out there and entered, finished in 13th place. So not quite the takedown that I was hoping for, but only put 50 lineups into that main GPP. And the fact that we got within 10 to 15 points of first place is not good enough for me, but hey, it's still, a sign that we went out there and did the right thing. So I'm liking that. Our bankroll is liking it as well. We cashed out for right around a 4x week, and heading into the Sanderson Farms, which is a regular swing season event, should be yet another profitable one. So a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and get our core picks rolling here. All right, we've got my projections on the screen, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, let's go ahead and take a look at our key stats, the sort of metrics that I'm looking at this week to get an idea of who the best plays are going to be. So over here on the key stats tab, Country Club of Jackson is the venue that we'll be at, and number one's approach. That should not be a surprise. Always the number one key stat, but most importantly, a lot of those mid to long iron ranges, so the 150 to 175, 175 to 200, you can see that wedge and also that 175 to 200 yard range are included. Just a lot of middle to long irons rather than the super short irons like wedges there. You'll have a couple flip wedges. You're not going to have a ton of 200 to 250 yard approaches, mostly just on the par 5s. It's going to be a lot of those mid to long irons, particularly on the par 3s, but also on a vast majority of the par 4s. Heading down to shots gained putting, that's our number 2 key stat. I'm looking at Bermuda putting. We are on Championship Bermuda grass down here in Mississippi. Last 24 rounds are always important when looking at putting form. Baseline there. Also birdie or better percentage. And this is really the one key stat that's going to help me differentiate in that middle tier, maybe top of the 6K range. Some of those value options is birdie or better percentage. This golf course is unbelievably easy. Plays right around 2 strokes under par, and you're going to have to get to right around 20 to 25 under par to win. You need players that are capable of putting out a 7 to 8 birdie ceiling for at least 2, maybe even 3 out of the 4 rounds. So birdie or better percentage is a great way to encapsulate those sort of aggressive players that can go out there and post that kind of production. So birdie or better percentage is important. Same thing with par 5 scoring. You do have the 4 par 5s. They're all also, outside of one of them, all relatively long. Shots gained off the tee a little bit less important here. Same thing with shots gained around the green, but both of them are still in the pool there. Then a few other comp course sort of things down there with shots gained at Birdie Fest, shots gained at comp courses, and then, your good old shots gained at the Country Club of Jackson. But with all of that in mind, you're looking at a Birdie Fest, an easy golf course where you got to set up opportunities with your irons, and of course, our number 2 key stat, cashing in on those birdies. So Bermuda grass putting is going to be a key part of what I'm using to identify my top plays, along with iron play. And the person that won this last year, Sam Burns, our returning champion, who, of course, ended last week at the President's Cup on a heater, is going to be the poster child for who to choose at this golf course. So at $10,700, it shouldn't surprise anybody out there that he is one of my top plays here, and in fact, might be by far my highest exposed play on the slate. So in terms of the course fit perspective, he's long off the tee, which this is just over a 7,400 yard golf course, which even for a par 72 is at least moderately long. It's not elite distance category sort of thing, but a lot longer than what you're used to seeing during the swing season. He's also got the Bermuda stats we're looking for, right? Gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round on Bermuda. The approach play has been outstanding for quite some time. You can see gaining close to half a stroke per round in that category. We knew he was going to be a great play coming in last year. I played him here. I played him at over 50% of my lineups, and he ended up coming through for the win. based on how, he made everything at the President's Cup, whether it was 20 feet, a 70-foot eagle putt, a few other 50-foot bombs that he made there on Saturday and Sunday. Sam Burns is putting with authority right now. And over there at Quail Hollow, it was also this championship Bermuda grass that you'll have over here at the Country Club of Jackson. So same surface, putting with a lot of confidence. The ball striking has been there for quite some time. We know that the driving can also start to click for Sam Burns like it did at this golf course last year, and he was able to win at this venue without gaining on the greens. In fact, he lost 2 strokes putting to the field last year and was still able to hoist the trophy. Imagine if he's able to take somewhat, or even a percentage of some of the putting confidence that he was able to take from Quail Hollow on, again, the same sort of surfaces around Country Club of Jackson. He's going to boat race the field, right? And of course, to go out there and replicate the tee to green performance that he had in the 2021 version would be asking a lot from Sam Burns. But if he goes out there, still has an above average week like he's used to having, which is gaining 5 or 6 strokes to the field tee to green over his 4 categories, goes out there and again is even half the putter that we saw at the President's Cup, the rest of the field is going to have a Sam Burns problem come Sunday. So I really like him here. I know he's expensive. He's going to be extremely chalky, but I think it's mega chalk probably worth eating. So we're going to have to keep an eye on the ownership. It is undoubtedly going to be up there, and like I mentioned, deservingly so, but somebody who's probably going to be my highest exposed player of the week, and I feel pretty confident going into the week doing so. Our next pick is going to be Taylor Montgomery at $9,600. He's not my first choice in this range. In fact, that was Sebastian Munoz. I recorded a video just before going live here that I had to go and scrap because Sebastian Munoz was my second core pick and he ended up withdrawing. So we're moving on to Taylor Montgomery, who isn't the same player. Sebastian Munoz has the course history, has a win around Country Club of Jackson, but in terms of their player archetype, the kind of skills that they bring to the table, pretty similar players. You have spike putters in Munoz and Taylor Montgomery. Montgomery gained nearly 6 strokes putting last week, but you also have players that are very aggressive, well above average iron players. That's extremely evident if you've ever seen Taylor Montgomery hit a golf ball before, but also a higher pedigree player than a lot of his peers. Taylor Montgomery is by far the class of the new graduation class. He's kind of like Will Zalatoris from last year, where he was just bar none the best player coming out. He has a lot of talent in pretty much every single shots gained category, and I know it's only a 1 tournament sample size, but outside of his off the tee play, he was, just a killer all around. And off the tee, a lot of that was due to penalty strokes. Had a few wayward drives that really cost him off the tee, but hits it a long way, is one of the mashers that you're getting here off the Korn Ferry Tour. Can get it done on approach. Around the green is not a strong suit for Montgomery, but it's also not a liability there. And like we've mentioned, the putting numbers are extremely volatile, but when you get him on a solid week like you saw there at the Fortinet, it's going to be somebody that you pretty much have to have. And at $9,600, the high birdie percentage player that has that volatility, that's also going to be relatively low owned. Now, Sebastian Munoz was probably going to be right around like 10 to 15% owned. I was going to take him like 30, 35%. Now that he's withdrawn, a lot of that ownership is going to go to Montgomery. Some of it will go up to Denny McCarthy, be distributed a little bit towards the bottom of the 9K range as well. Montgomery, though, is maybe going to be 7, 8% owned at the very max. He's $9,600. He's priced among a lot of for sure things here on the PGA Tour. And if there's one thing I know about swing season DFS is that some of the newer guys on tour, especially if they haven't gone out there and had sustained success already, which, the second start of the season, right? How could you have possibly had sustained success at this point? Don't draw the sort of ownership that they probably should. In Montgomery, just based on what I've seen, some of the Korn Ferry Tour coverage that we've had over the last few months, particularly there with the Korn Ferry Tour finals, Montgomery is somebody that you're going to want to roster, particularly when he's lower owned like he is right now. And also, even at $9,600, probably cheaper than he should be. So somebody that I'm going all in on this week. Again, I want to be early to the Montgomery train because, like I said, he could very well be one of these elite level new rookies on the tour that you're going to have to invest in at like 20% ownership if you're getting him at $9,600. Moving on, we've got ourselves Keegan Bradley at $9,400. Again, the pricing here is completely out of whack with how weak the field is, but Keegan kind of has that Sergio Garcia feel to him. If you remember, before Sam Burns won, the champion was Sergio Garcia, who won putting with his eyes closed around Country Club of Jackson. And Keegan Bradley hasn't really been his best self. So if you look at the recent form here, you'll see that he's made his last cut at the BMW, but did miss the cut at the FedEx St. Jude. Before that, it was a made cut, another missed cut. So not quite playing like we saw there towards the middle of the 2021-2022 season. But if you look at his shots gained metrics, you can see why we wanted to get to them. Off the tee and on approach is always doing his thing, but with the short game categories, really plugged both of the holes. Around the green, he got it to a neutral. With the putter, he was actually gaining for quite some time on the PGA Tour. And when you get him on Bermuda, it's happened to be one of his favorite surfaces. And you can see here, for his career over the last 3 years, he is losing 0.34 shots gained per round on the surface, which is far from ideal. But if you look at some of his spike performances, like you saw at the Players Championship, like you saw at the Valspar Championship, both this year and the year before that when he finished in second place to Sam Burns that year, he's had spike performances on this Bermuda grass surface. So if you ever want to target Keegan Bradley, it's at a golf course where approach play is at a premium, like you have here with Country Club of Jackson, but also at a golf course where you have Bermuda grass. So he checks both of those boxes. And like we've seen with Sam Burns last year, you can win this golf tournament by losing 2 strokes putting, right? If you're that good from tee to green. Keegan Bradley has that tee to green outcome in him. We've seen it multiple times over his career to this point. And on top of that, you also have somebody who from time to time gains on Bermuda grass, right? So it's not even like he has to go out there and have that sort of spike performance. I absolutely love him at this golf course. And despite that, his course history isn't ideal, but he did miss the cut last year, but a 4th place finish in 2021. So you can see that upside that's there. Taylor Montgomery obviously hasn't played here before, but outside of the win for Sam Burns, he also had a 3rd place finish back in 2019. So this ball striking skill set where you're an approach first sort of player, where putting on Bermuda grass you can get hot, has been a sustainable tool for a lot of these players over the years, and it's why I'm taking that so heavily with my modeling. One thing I'll say is that on here, guys, you see all of my projections. Some of them are blacked out, the ones that we're not talking about, because they are on my Patreon page. There is a link down below to that if you're looking for access to all of my projections. But definitely recommend checking it out. It is $10 a month, and you get access to not only everything that I have on here, but there'll be projected ownership when that comes out. My player pool will be constantly updated throughout the week. There's prize picks props that I'm putting on there. There's also an NFL tier where I'm doing that for Showdown for the main slate over there, prize picks for the NFL too. Just a lot of content to be had that isn't always posted here on the channel. A lot more posted on the Patreon side, a lot of extra content there. But figured I'd plug that now that we're halfway through. But continuing with our core picks, let's go ahead and touch on Davis Riley at $9,000. So getting towards the bottom end of this 9K range, top of the 8K range, Davis Riley is head and shoulders the best player in this range. The issue is he's also, arguably outside of Sepp Straka, the most out of form player in this range. So when we take a look at his last 24 measured rounds, you'll see that he's gaining off the tee. He's on approach. He's been okay of late, but the short game categories have cost him quite a few cuts. He's losing right around 2/3 of a stroke per round with the putter, losing around the green. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, right, we give him a true sample size, the last 50 measured rounds, you can see he's gaining in every category but around the green. Close to half a stroke per round on approach, close to half a stroke per round off the tee as well. The putter is a slight positive. That is the sort of Davis Riley that we're looking for. And if we consider that the last 24 of those last 50 measured rounds have been quite as poor as they have for Davis Riley, imagine how good the good rounds have been for Davis, right? That's what we want to target. He's a volatile player. He's going to have quite a few floor performances, which are an ugly missed cut for Davis. He's not past doing that. Whereas a Jon Rahm, even if he's missing a cut, it's going to be by 1 stroke. He's going to be fighting to it to the very end. DJ is the same sort of way, right? He'll miss cuts. Usually he's still fighting there to the very end. Davis Riley could very well trunk slam and be plus 10 like a Siwoo Kim. So, right, just understand the sort of volatility that you're getting yourself into. But on Bermuda, Davis Riley has been an absolute killer, gaining 0.54 shots gained per round on the greens. The ball striking stats when he's playing his best golf speak for themselves. And in this range, I'd argue that there's not a higher upside player. So I'm getting there. I am a sucker for Davis Riley. I play him a lot more often than I should, but it's a lot based on the potential that I see. I see a PGA Tour champion, somebody that could beat a field by 4 or 5 shots, and call it FOMO, call it whatever you must. Somebody that I'll definitely have in my player pool. Next up, we've got Taylor Moore at 8,500. And Taylor Moore isn't a sexy pick, but just based on pedigree, the stats indicate that Taylor Moore is going to be here for a long time, going to be a problem on tour, and likely going to win himself some tour events before he's done out here. You know, he's a young player, clearly has a lot of room to improve, but based on what we've seen over the last 24 rounds, is gaining in every category and gaining significantly across every category. So you can see here, gaining 0.3 shots per round off the tee, gaining on approach, around the green, a third of a shot, and with the putter, gaining half a stroke per round. Now you'd say, oh, it's a sample size thing, right? Okay, let's look at the last 50 measured rounds, right? Let's give him a little bit more of a sample size. Still gaining across 3 out of the 4 categories. Sure, the one category he's losing in is on approach. That's a little bit concerning, but still gaining significantly off the tee, around the green, and with the putter. He's a much better player than people want to give him credit for. So when I see the stats there, they make me a little bit excited. But when we look at the course history, there's something that a lot of people might overlook this week. So first and foremost, a top 20 last year. That's great to see. He played it back in 2018 too, and I did a little bit of research there. He got a sponsorship exemption back in 2018. He has ties to the golf course. He's played it multiple times before outside of tournament play. Taylor Moore is someone to keep an eye on, as potentially has a little bit of an edge with the golf course. He's coming in with form, like I said, gaining across all 4 stat categories. He's, in my opinion, going to be here for a long time. He has a consistent skill set. I think he's just a damn good golfer at this point. And at $8,500, this might be where he's priced going forward in these sort of fields, right? When you're an above average tour player, kind of like a Harris English, right? This is where you're going to be priced. You're not necessarily in form, but you're still a better player than a lot of your peers. Taylor Moore's in form though, right? So if he's one of those players, he probably should be $9,600, kind of like a Taylor Montgomery, right? And if Taylor Moore is going to come in still relatively low owned at this point, which it's too early in the week to really tell on ownership, but I don't think people are going to be racing to the window to be playing Taylor Moore. I'm going to have bunches and feel pretty damn solid about it in doing so. But the last core pick I want to touch on here is going to be Sheamus Power at $8,400, and he is by far the most uncomfortable pick that I'm getting to. If you thought that Taylor Moore or a few of the other picks like a Davis Riley had sketchy form coming in, just shield your eyes when you look here at Sheamus Power. Over his last 24 rounds, he's been right around neutral in every category. You can see losing slightly off the tee, a slight gainer on approach and around the green and with the putter. And over the last 50 measured rounds, you may say, oh, maybe it's just a little short-term thing where he's just kind of, sputtering in every single category. No, not really. Gaining off the tee, a slight loser on approach, a slight gainer both around the green, and a little bit more significant of a gainer with the putter, which historically is what Sheamus Power is known for. He's an excellent putter, one of the best putters that you're going to find on the PGA Tour. But the ball striking form has been a problem for quite some time now. So that worries me, right? So we've got the bad out of the way. The solid part is that he's probably the second, third best player in this field. I mean, we know that Sam Burns is the best player, but Sahith Gala, he's probably a lot better than. We know he's better than Post and Henley, all of these guys. So he probably is a 10K golfer in disguise here, where if he was coming in form, he'd probably be at least $10,300 on this slate. So he potentially is $2,000 too cheap. He finished in the top 15 of the first 3 majors last year, which speaks volumes to his pedigree. I believe in the last one, he ended up missing the cut or something. So he wasn't able to hold on for all 4 there, but just he's in these majors. He's a better player than people were giving him credit for. I know the form isn't there, but he hasn't played for a month at this point. It might be time to jump on board the Sheamus Power train. And just to give you an idea here, right? He hasn't played in God knows how long at this point. Last start that he had was back at the BMW, right? Where he ended up finishing at 65th, which was nearly last place, right? That was a no-cut event. Missed the cut at the FedEx St. Jude. Missed the cut at the Open Championship, which is last major, the one that I said where he wasn't able to finish there in the top 20. Clearly, the train fell off the rails. And even over on the European Tour, didn't have the best performances. He played in a few events there on the DP World Tour. he's going to turn it around at some point, and if he does here at low ownership, $2,000 too cheap here on this slate is going to be a GPP option that I just can't pass up. All right, guys, that is all I've got for this week's core picks. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and smash that like button, but also go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this week. As always, gonna have you covered with some value picks, fades, and sleepers, and our weekly DFS live stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of that content to come. But best of luck with all of your lineups, and let's get this cash, fellas.